Welcome back to another episode of Data in Sports. We are here today on episode 15, recording on March the 13th. And today we have the pleasure to speak with Tomasz Janas from Pro Athlete Metrics. Tomasz, or TJ, as you are commonly referred to. How you doing today? Thanks for joining.
Doing great. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
No, it's my pleasure. We're gonna have a lot of fun. We're gonna have a lot of fun today. But before we get into it, in terms of your background and diving into the heart of the conversation, before wrapping with or then wrapping with the behind the data, I just want to give the audience the ideal outcome for today's episode, so they know what to expect. And so today we're going to demonstrate that performance is measurable, potential is identifiable, and injury is actually predictable if you test correctly. And we want to give the audience a clear through line from your coaching roots, the notion of frustration with subjectivity, to hardware validation, and then future predictive modeling. So we'll get some advice from you also for whether it's for athletes or data professionals, and some predictions as well. So I'm going to actually spend, I think, a little bit of time here, but not go into too much detail because of our mutual Polish roots. But give us a sense of your background, and I want to make sure that you include like some of your story of like where you came from, because it is quite remarkable, and I don't want to just gloss over that.
Long story short, I grew up in Poland in a very small village. Came up probably about 326 people in a village, and I grew up in quite a sport driven family. Quite a few family members play high level sports, very driven like any farmer. We always were the hard work disciplines, and part of it that seems to be normal part of our discussions. And I grew up in a very strict community system, and unfortunately luckily having to me during those years when I growing up and was playing in under professional environment in academies in Poland, and I was subject to the mandatory army. So unfortunately, that was not something what was very well thought for the athletes, because you have to take a pause for 2 years of any kind of development to do that. So opportunity came into me when I was playing with the national teams, and I had an opportunity to to move to Germany and to on a trial basis. And unfortunately, one of the obstacles was how to do that. So I had a very few people involved. And when we went to the training camp to place in Germany called the Karmarkstadt, everything was arranged for me. And I excused myself during the lines, went to the washroom, and never came back. And so the price for that was, it was a very difficult price to pay. I was considered to be deserter from the army. So that's mean MPs for years and years will come into to my mom's place, continuously asking where your son is, where your son is. And the one of the prices what I had to pay, I did not see my family for over 18 years before I can go back home first time. And when the long story journey, when I became and later on and became the Canadian citizen, I had some work to do with the Polish embassy here for me to be safely arrived back in Poland after 18 or 19 years. But that was probably the most exciting part. Rest of it was a little bit harder. What we have. But that's pretty much in the background. Grew up in a very small town. Joined the academy as I was 6 years old. My brother plays in academy. My cousin plays in academy. My uncles plays in the academy in a professional team. So the sport was embedded in our brains, pretty much in our lives.
Yeah, thanks for that. Again, I didn't want to gloss over it because part of what we like to do here is help highlight and show the backgrounds and stories and journeys of the guests. One, because as we discussed, I think earlier this week, like everyone has a fascinating story when you dig into it. And I believe it helps other people see it with respect to people watching this and perhaps appreciate like you can come from almost anywhere and get to a place at a top level when it comes to working in sport, having some relationship in sports. This was to show them like, you know, it actually doesn't matter. What we discussed today in terms of your experience and predictions for the future in terms of sports science, I believe is what matters a lot. And it helps shape our journeys and our perspective. So can you, before we get into pro athlete metrics in terms of what you're building out, Can you then give some of the your professional experience from coaching and to some of the other work that you've done to help give folks a sense of where your point of view comes from when we get into like the topics of data, scouting, recruitment, and again, the future of sports science, as I mentioned?
Yes, of course. So growing up in Poland, of course, grew up in a very strict environment. Climbing through the ranks was, it wasn't a choice. This is the way of living, and it was not a pay for play system. You have to be the best to stay. Is no such a thing. And for you plays, it was not a 10,000 children who wants the. We didn't have a school soccer, for example. With no other community leagues. This is it. That's how you play is a promotion relegation systems in every single level, starting from the bottom to up, right? So you have to sustain that kind of environment and mentality, and from there, I elevate myself pretty quickly to the senior team. Just I was probably just under 16 years old. And that allows me to grow up really, really fast. I was called into the national camps, and I had opportunity to play some significant games in the early '80s. When the opportunity to go play in Germany, it was way of living. Like, and this is ways of the surviving to certain way. And so during my professional career of playing, it took me for quite a few countries. I was in Poland and Holland and Germany and Greece and in Norway. So it allows me to travel around the world and play. I love what I do. Unfortunately, sustained massive injury, and that injury put me almost 19 months in recovery. And I will follow up and fall into massive depression. I was treated for over 2.5 years for depression after the recovering from the injuries. A lot of those things, what happens on the field also has a lot of effects off the field. What you do. When I was recovering from depression, I was treating by psychiatrists and here in Canada, and when I flew in here. So the good thing about it is he was quite noticeable, notable in university sports, and he knew how to treat athletes properly. He put me in the proper protocols and medications that allows me to, not fell farther down into the addictions and yeah, professional athletes have. So the one things what was difficult for recovery, it was I was putting in an experimental medication with a lot of side effects, and so coming off from the medication was dramatic, more dramatic, and coming onto the medication. So as an athlete, you kind of when you sustain such a life-changing injury, it's pretty much your life's ends. One of the part of your life disappears because the only thing I knew since I was 6 years old is how to train and play. I didn't pretty much knew anything else. So to grasp the reality, what I have to do now is quite difficult. Later on, and I walk away from football for about 8 years. Later on, my younger son was born, and he, of course, has a very natural abilities to sports. He kind of roped me into it to coaching him because I identify his abilities very quickly. So I came back here to coaching. I thought playing professionally and coaching would be the same thing. That's almost actually the farthest from the truth. That is one has absolutely done nothing to do with another because I was a soccer player that's not necessarily making me a coach at all.
Yeah.
So I realized this quite quickly coaching in a community ranks. And even if I was ex-professional player, I went to community to learn how to coach. And from there, soon I decided to educate myself going through the courses. Very quickly I realized I will start elevating myself to the club systems, to provincial state systems, then from the national pathways and then international pathways. So it took about 11 or 12 years to kind of complete the entire circle of education. And included in this of education was I had the opportunity to meet in Germany on a sports show a gentleman called Jeff Alger from Seattle Sport and Science. And he was actually developing the Victa 2, the soccer ball distribution machines,
Hmm.
and I fell in love with the math. The math analytics part of it is everything was fascinating. So the more and more we talk, he asked me to be part of this project and kind of write the protocols how the machine needs to distribute and functions on the field in a functional basis. So I was traveling from Edmonton to Seattle, a flight 5:30 in the morning on Saturday and coming back at midnight on Sunday, almost weekly. to go to his facilities, and they were coming back here. So I spent about 5 years working with them. Then when I went to the USSF program, I was doing my goalkeeping pro license in the USSF in the Carson, California. I had the opportunity to meet quite an interesting network of people, and the one of the instructors there, he was specialized in analytics and sports. He was from the Scottish Football Federation, and so I started taking his diplomas. Then when I moved into the master program for master coaching and leadership and sport management, University of Delaware, Professor Robinson has assigned me to the very good mentor Andrew Donry from Sacramento, and he was the head of the Olympic Committee development. He wrote some programs for Iceland as well. So he was well known around the world. So when you have that kind of mentors and people who mentor you over time, um, the brain expands and it allows you to think outside of the box, allows you to really look into some of the topics a little bit from a different angle. And so because I had experience in multiple countries and educations from Canadian the Soccer Association, I did a lot of education in the US Soccer Associations, my master's programs, children national licenses. I started realizing the repeatable patterns of things what happens in football. And some of them was good and some of them were not. And those ones who were not, it will start really bothering me over time. And I'm a person who I won't go publicly and bash the programs or bash the roadmaps where people build. I believe anybody who really step in and put themselves out there to help children or people or young athletes should be commended for. But also those people who would put us in positions require to have a better leadership, and it's our responsibility to provide them with a better leadership so they can actually succeed and be successful versus struggling continuously to finding the answers and program. So outside of
Okay.
that, I think that's kind of story what I have. Sorry, my dog is very anxious here.
That's
He doesn't
okay.
want.
This is the realities. This is realities of us working from home offices or what have you with animals
Yes,
running.
yeah,
It's all good. Dogs are always welcome here. With that, before we get into the heart, again, in terms of with pro athlete metrics and what you're working on, there's two things that I wanted to ask you about to
yes.
again help further set the context of this stage. So through your experience, what have you seen as the gap between coaching intuition and measurable reality?
So the one things that really helped me to identify this problem, it wasn't actually coaching. It was actually it actually was trading in the stock market. So stock market it becomes I had opportunity to learn at S&P Capital, and I was taking the course, it's called the DNA course. And that was about 2 years course what I took it. The one things what that taught me is a recognition of patterns, massive recognition and fast. So the gap spoken to you, what is the gap? So one thing's what I learned through that, what I think and what's happening is not matching at all. So that's mean I was discretionary how I felt, not what the data was showing me. That was number one problem. And the trick was I was extremely successful being discretionary and the same time being the systematic. So now you have two worlds fighting against each other. Which one is going to win in the end? It becomes a problem. The farther and farther I was going through my career and the trading and coaching and being technical director and executive director. So far, one thing's what I found, if you start making decisions discretionary based on your feelings, they're gonna reward you for the short period of time, but gonna punish you for the longer term. Systematic approach, an approach based on the numbers and data has no feelings.
Right.
It's just the true numbers. So what I think and how I feel in that day is irrelevant. So, for example, give you the context in sports. I saw a lot of coaches who rush from the job to the practice, being in a bad mood because they have stuck in the traffic, and suddenly the topic they have to distribute in a session goes south. And then, if the question would be asked anywhere by athletes, you know, because they don't agree in the tone, the way how they speak, the way how to execute, right away they will be a lot of backlash. He said, I'm the coach, I'm doing this. So with the feelings, it comes a sense of pride. With a sense of pride, it comes the ego. With the ego comes absolutely closing yourself to any further opinions. So you have a vicious circle coming all the time. So
Yep.
you have to be very careful on the subjectivity. So a lot of people will say, so the analytics in sports, for example, in a Seattle sport and science, I couldn't just write the ball traveled this way or the travel this way. Repeatable accuracy execution of the ball. That's why people would purchase, because you solve the problem for inaccuracies. So the players can train repeatable patterns because he knows this ball is going to land exactly how it's supposed to be. So it allows him to do the repetitions to go and play. But a human cannot deliver that, not into that degree.
And is that like through that experience when you realized that you could combine hardware and biomechanics to create some objective baselines that the coaching, I guess, with the eye test couldn't? Or was there another specific experience that kind of led you to have that realization?
And the one things what I very quickly realize, I think one things what it really makes me realize is is why certain athletes became the athletes and they can compete in multiple sports and others can't. So, for example, we have a famous Olympian here who is incredible, the cyclist who she won Olympic gold medals, and then she goes and speed skating goes and has a bronze in Olympics, summer and winter, right? Then we have an NHL player from Czech Republic, and he came from the pro soccer background from Czech Republic. So suddenly I would start picking up those athletes and ask the question why, what they have when other people don't, why the cross path exists, how I can identify, can the math can be utilized on a standardized basis that cross to all discipline sports. So when I sit down and after I finish my master coaching at the University of Delaware, one thing came to my mind very quickly is what the elite athletes have, what not to try to achieve, but they can't, and why not? So can we measure this? So one things was very important things what I realized very quickly. One variable was called the grit. The grit is a passion, perseverance, determination. Things who we feel, but we have to turn to metrics. And the body has also massive input how we perform. And without a passion, you don't have a drive. Without a drive, you don't have perseverance. And so forth. So because the grid system was developed, I believe it was in the University of Hamburg, if I'm not. So because that grid was developed, particularly in the women's football, we start understanding because if it comes to female sports, female act on emotions. So allows the drive to be harder. We, as a male, we're more practical, but we're also ego driven. And so those objective elements who came into the performance started raising the question mark for me. Can that be standardized? And I tell you very quickly why it came to this. Let's take a look at it. The biggest sport in the United States, one of the biggest one, American football. Take a look at the combines. They're running and televising in a TV. 90% of the combines are standardized tested. That's all they care. What is a 40-yard dash? How I can move side to side? How I can jump? So I'm saying, hold on for a second. If they do it, how can that be done in across the sports? And that's what everything starts from me from that moment.
I love that. There's a lot there in terms of similar advice, I would say, that has come out of other episodes with other guests is, asking this question of why. How do you measure some of the intangibles and then having context across the board, right? Because these analyses are really holistic. So we'll come back to that what you just alluded to or spoke to with the combine, which is around scouting and recruitment effectively of how NFL teams will draft players and how that's measurable and objective. Let's step back from that for a second and talk about this theme of data collection and accuracy. So data.
Okay. So
I had some specific questions, but can you give us like a couple sentences on what pro athlete metrics looks to achieve?
proactive metrics is a performing intelligent platforms who monitors, gather the data, and predict the models based on an athlete's data, predict the models for the training to constant improvements and monitoring his development. The loads prioritizations, strengths and weaknesses on a six core segments. So is it power, the speed, the agility, endurance, vertical powers, the four parts. So we standardize. So of course, FIFA has their own standardized lines, and the NCAA has their own. The NFL has their own. So we don't really have to look too far for that. The question would be how we compare them. So of course, the benchmarking it becomes an issue. So we have to create a system who automatically update the benchmarking from the governing bodies who already keep this. So we want to make sure it's scientifically defendable. So we're getting our provincial bodies, the national bodies. We're taking a lot of benchmarks directly fresh from there. So what a beautiful part what I was capable of building is, and the system because is a based on intelligence. He actually over time he started developing the internal benchmarks. So the internal benchmark base. So for example, I was just testing one of the soccer teams, and I have 18 players, and 18 players were tested. So outside of the 18 individual reports for each of those athletes, I was capable also with drawing the reckonable patterns, the strengths and the weaknesses, entire profiling of the team, who they are, based on their metrics. And from there, I withdraw and I said, okay, so if this is the fact, if I presented those conclusions from the individual basis to the team aspect, and I give it to the coach, now when we have a systematic patterns, when a yo-yo test R1 is at 47% below the benchmark for the high school player who's 15 years old, then what type of development we're doing with that team? So it was very obvious when I had a meeting with the coaching staff and I said, I don't know too much about your team, but I assume you're probably losing or giving up a lot of your leads in the second half of the field, the team. And so, well, how do you know that? And I said, because 90% of your squad cannot play 90 minutes, right? That means something is going to suffer on your output, and there's no way to hide it, right? Or you're going to collapse closer. You won't going to cover much space, or you're going to dive into it because fatigue is going to be so. That was the main things who were very important for me to standardize. So I started writing the protocols first for every single test, and from that protocol, I had it's an entire vision where we came in. And to tell you the truth, protein metrics wasn't built for the public consumption. Well, it was built for me and my own internal development. It was never built to go to public. But because I had avenues, then I'm also teaching. I also teaching the computer science also as a consultant. So I had the abilities to create something. And when I realized halfway in the build, this is way bigger than me, that's what I decided to make this multiple sports. It was never designed in the beginning to be that at all.
Oh, interesting. It's kind of funny how some things work out, right? Where you go into with one
Yeah.
intention and it comes out another through luck or through, I guess, happenstance or coincidence, or again, maybe perhaps like a conversation of various observations. Like you mentioned with financial markets and this notion of pattern recognition and asking why. I believe again that's like a good lens to view through which to view the world, or in our in our day to day is like, what are the patterns? Why is this happening? Or why not? And I believe you can get some very curious places. So let's talk about a couple things here specifically, again, related to the intelligence through the lens of data and accuracy thereof. Why, from your perspective, does hardware literacy matter for modern sports scientists?
Well, I just want to maybe before I answer to this one, I want to make sure we make a differentiate things between enormous amount of hardware those days is geared into the lab testing
Hmm.
versus the field testing. Okay. So one thing was very, very clear. So for example, a lot of GPS wearables, they track the distance and energy spans and movements part of it. And it gives you this all the radio map how the players move during the match. Let's talk about football, soccer, for example.
Sure. Oh, sorry. On data and sports, it's football.
Okay. So So let's talk about football. So this is the one generic statement which you can give, right? So for example, okay, I can go to the practice 6 days a week, but that makes me better player because I go there at all the times. Do that makes me a better player? An answer would be no. So because I collect how somebody runs, it gives me his endurance powers and covering part of it, but would that makes him better athletes if the GPS tracking will be the only thing to do? Answer is no, right? So the aspect of it is the hardware becomes, for example, the video analysis was the biggest innovation we ever had. Now we have cameras, AI driven, tracking the players, doing this everything else. Okay, so you have the video, and I'm gonna tell you what my issue lays down to this. I was part of the national pathway in Canada for about 14 years. And every 6 to 8 weeks, we have something called scouting weekends. So that all the players from the national pathway from the Western Canada will gather together for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. In that time, all the coaches from the regional centers will come back to the national center. We're going to evaluate all those athletes. We train on Fridays. Fridays have inter-squad games. The Sundays, the best players from that weekend were dressed 18 players to play against NCAA or CIS pro team, whoever comes in, that's going to be the showcase games. And everybody's going to watch from the stands. So take to consideration in the press box, it was 16 coaches and then a national coach who we have to submit a report based what we see, evaluate each player on that game. So that's how we're going to pick it up the top 18 players to be dressed on Sunday, right? It was one thing where I found out very, very quickly in those press boxes for years. We watched the same game, the same athletes, the same outcomes, the same field, the wind, the sun, the rain. How come our report's different? If anybody can explain me, I give them all arguments they want. And we're not talking about one coach. We're talking about provincial and national body coaching staff. How come the reports on the athletes become one? So if we rate the athletes from 1 to 5,
Mm-hmm.
2.5 is the average for you to stay in a program. So suddenly you have a criteria on a list and the numbers are, you know the player by the names and you write into it. So how are we so different? And we're all expert in sport and we're watching the same game, the same stadium, but not necessarily agreeing to the same thing. So that subjectivity right away hit me hard.
Yeah.
And I was quite, for example, we had a female goaltenders who grew a little bit too fast, and she was hitting 5'11", 5'12". She was very, very young. And based on her scouting weekend, 80% of the coaches said she was moving too slow. She was very clumsy. They didn't take the consideration her frame would not support her growth spurs what she has. But because I was in charge of the goalkeeping, I was very offended by it because we brought her here to make sure we put them in the right environment so she can develop under our guidance. When her body catch up to her frame, we have excellent athletes. So it was massive argument to remove her from the program. Later on, she ended up in the New York State University and NCAA, right? So my issue is if we're so well prepared and we're supposed to be an expert and we're watching the same game, why is such a massive difference?
It
That's what.
kind of, yeah, it kind of goes into towards the top in the background about this like gap that exists between this intuition and measurable reality and perhaps even context because there's these subjective biases. And that's where, again, it's another example of the art and the science, right? If you only look at numbers, you can miss the context. If you only look at gut and the eye test and what have you, you have biases. And that's I believe, the magic that exists in terms of leveraging data with that experience. Of course, in the right way, easier said than done. That gives us to the air quotes ideal outcome. So this kind of has us segueing into this next theme of scouting and recruitment in terms of you're mentioning some of the challenges. So like as you alluded to, you are part of this pathway in terms of national pathway in Canada. You've also worked with agencies like uh, SRUSA, Sports Recruiting USA. So let's talk about how objective metrics are changing the recruitment game for both college and pro prospects, because this is one I believe athletes of today would be interested in to understand, to get a sense of even like what they should be doing or measuring themselves, right? Which we've discussed in other episodes, whether it's football related, hockey related, in terms of what the elite athletes to do to give themselves benchmarks. Luke Jenkinson of San Diego FC spoke to this a little bit in terms of just showing the academy level players, like, here are your metrics. That's great. But here's what like the MLS team, right? The first team is doing. Like, you still have a long way to go in terms of your development, but it gives them something to strive towards, right? So how does data help us level the playing field and perhaps even find these like diamonds in the rough to get noticed? Like, does data level the playing field or no? Or does it create more chaos because there's so much data? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so again, I answer this in a two parts, if you don't mind. All right, so,
Please.
so I'm currently involved. So one thing's what building profit metrics allowed me to do is to choose my pilot project with the control rollout partners, what I want to be involved in. So one of the partners who's involved is Villarreal Academy of Alberta, so directly connected to Villarreal in Spain. So you have a lot of those academies in the same circle in the United States, and another one is a National Junior Hockey League. Is a private academy league in northern Alberta and BC. What one thing's what I'm doing there, and particularly how this is important for the scoutings and outside of the metrics and standardization of standards, the way how they need to train, because we're gonna take a look at it of UHL, triple A for the hockey, or for example, we're gonna take Villarreal, their philosophy from the Spain for transferable into North American football. So all those things I have to take to consideration to standardize program for those both organizations, what are different, right? And currently I'm preparing the boxer who she came from WIBS championships in a few months ago, and she's gonna fight on a May 9th for the WBC title. So all those different sports starting realizing for me the benchmarks for the governing bodies from the World Boxing Federation, US Boxing Federation, US Soccer Federation, or NHL or NCAA, those benchmark are important to give us the guidance, right? Now, in the environments we work, via Real Academy of Alberta, we will develop the internal benchmark of standards what comes and are driven from the Villarreal philosophy. So we interpret the data to the physical, so the models will be built and the philosophy of their development. The National Junior Hockey League in Alberta, they are their junior league who they moving their players, the next pathway is a WHL, and the next pathway it becomes NCAA and CIS. So of course the benchmark will be scaled directly to those environments. So we'll take all the CIS universities, NCAA universities, Western hockey leagues. So we can start measure that 15-year-olds to 15-year-olds, not the 15-year-olds to 25-year-olds. Right? So internally, we have to start develop their own benchmark towards the athletes to compare apple to apples. Right? So the system has to recognize that. It has to understand context, what you just alluded yourself. As you said, the context is important to data. So we can run everything on the numbers alone, but we can do the numbers and we can predict the models based on a big picture. So for example, the financial markets, if you look at the Wall Street, is a $14 trillion market caps on every single day. Every trader who is a professional trader or prop trader or whatever he does, the first things what he's gonna do every single morning when he sits down to his computer is gonna look at big picture, the days, the weeks, the months. He will never start from the 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 1 hour, because he's gonna get killed. So the patterns from the past and the behavioral things from the past will direct the model's predictability for the futures based on variables we have today. So we're learning from the past, adaptation today, prediction tomorrow. That's what proactive metrics does. Capture data from the past, the models learning where we today. We take those numbers and it allows us to give us prediction of where we want to see these athletes 8 to 10 weeks from now to the next testing, and then measurable goals and the strengths and the weaknesses. If we have a strengths, we're maintaining them. If we have a weakness, we're improving them. Our job is to, before the football player become a player, he has to be an athlete. If the
100%.
football player cannot have a strength and a power, he cannot be a football player. I don't care how technically gifted he is. It's irrelevant. You still got to cover 330 yards. You still got to cover the game. You still needs to have endurance, separations, power to defending the ball, for all the tackles, the vertical jumps into the headers. Like all those things has to be predicted somehow and it trained. Now, if we push him too hard, what happens? Then we overload him. When we
Yeah.
overload him, injury crash. It's very, the coaches can say, well, I'm gonna do sprints every single day and I get a match on Sunday. Okay, let me know how that works for you.
I could tell you how it works because TJ, because that's what it was like. When I was growing up playing sports, it's push, push, push. But I guess to be fair, it's what the coaches knew because it's how they were trained. The type of data didn't quite exist. You didn't have, and Nikita Kashirski and I spoke about this because we played junior hockey together here in the Boston area. I went to college around the same time, where it was like these training centers didn't really exist so much. These coaches, a lot of it was on your own. And we were just discussing how, the athlete today, I mean, the coaches, the scouts, and all that, they all have so much more data. It does effectively level the playing field because many of these benchmarks, I assume, are published in many places. It's not hard to find, or you can
Not at
ask.
all. Not at all. Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. We have a enormous amount of information that we can gather.
Yeah, there's so much information, and it's just like it at least gives you a sense, like a barometer, right? Like where are you relatively speaking, and then to your point, you can have attainable goals to work towards to see like are you progressing or not, and then there's variables in terms of the inputs, which is not just our training, it's our recovery, it's our nutrition, it's all that to
That's
get a
correct.
sense if you're progressing forward. So it's like in a way, being the data person I am, and as others are, it's like kind of wish this existed when I was playing, but it is what it is. Like now I can ideally help others by having conversations with folks like yourself to show them like, hey, there are ways to measure yourself. So it doesn't matter if you're from a village outside of Wrocław in Poland or in London or what have you, like the data is there. To that though, there should be some sort of like air quotes verified standard, right? So there's like the other side of it. So why is having like a independent third party important to validate these claims that a coach might make, an agent might, athlete might make, an agent for an athlete might make, so that the coaches and scouts understand that this is air quotes like legit, right? Because it should go both ways, right? It cannot be asymmetric information. There should be, air quotes, perfect information to the extent that it can, so that the coach and scout is making a good decision. Because as we know, there's more and more athletes today playing sports at a younger age than there used to be, which is a great thing as sports are growing.
Well, there's a two things gonna be very important here. Integrity of the data, number
Hmm.
one. Okay, so something why my system is not released to public yet is in control rollout to make sure the integrity of the interpretation of the data is absolutely the highest priority. That's mean if you feed the system with a garbage data, you get garbage results, and that's the fact. So if you do not have a standardized testing and you don't have a protocols how to warm up, you do have a protocols how to test properly the surface, we're not comparing apple to apples. So I'll give you an example. I was testing the world champion 4 weeks ago, and I'm testing her tomorrow because I'm preparing her fight in a camp. She has 48 days to go before she's fight. So I do 70 days backwards and I prepare her for the fight. The one things what she says to me, we were doing change of directions of her footwork. And so one of them with a 5-10-5, we did the shadow runs to take a look at it, her abilities to change the directions and the power. And we were doing this on a turf. And the previous tests, when she done long time ago, it was on the floor. So the footwork she was wearing was the same, but the floors were different. Her comment and he said, I love absolutely everything, but I believe we should standardize the floor so that the results will be equal. I was slippery on a change of directions, what does not necessarily validate my power of the change of the directions. That's come from the athlete himself,
I love that
right? And
because it should
I have this on a code on a paper. I can show you. She wrote it that to me on her call, like
very
straight
good
up.
self very good self-awareness in terms of really being dialed in to understand like the why behind everything,
Yeah,
right? And that's what we've heard on prior episodes here when I've asked, sometimes I haven't asked the performance directors of like, what do the elite, like, what are the best of the best doing? Like, I say, don't give me names. That's not important. And resounding feedback is the best of the best. Ask why. They want to know why, not to question the coach, but because they want to themselves understand and reinforce that learning, right? To make sure
actually,
they're doing the right thing. So I love
you,
that.
you give me something, so I'm gonna say probably I shouldn't on an episode, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Okay.
Just no swearing because
No, no, it won't be
okay.
any swearing. Okay. So I was one of those people who was very curious about the combat sports. The
Okay.
combat sport is one of the division who was unstandardized for ages. Nobody knows exactly what's going on in that world.
Okay.
For some strange reason, I came with the idea. I'm gonna take a look at it. I can standardize this and take a look at it doing the tests. Okay. So the long story short, we tested first 10 boxers where based on amateur status, the fight status, pre-amateur fights, and professionals and world champions. That particular gym is the Southside Legion Boxing Club in Edmonton. They 80 years in existence. They build enormous amount of world-class athletes. So they were kind enough for me to be involved in the program, and I want to test this on the pilot. The long story short is, it's the way I took all the reports and I sent it to the athletes themselves. Then I took entire reports and I spin them out again. The systems told me, said, okay, one thing we found out very quickly, the lower power generation does not transform to the power punch. It gets lost someplace in translation and the way how they develop in all 10 boxers in that gym, right? So I requested the meeting. So the meeting was president of the club, vice president, strength conditioning coach, and a head coach of the boxers and a mindset coach. So I was sitting in a boardroom. Soon I walk in with the numbers and computers. Entire mood change. Everybody has a nose out of joint except the president. Suddenly I become a threat. So I said to myself, I wonder why atmosphere change. So I quickly realized when you put the numbers to the context, it comes accountability.
Mm-hmm.
And people do not like subjective things. I'm the best to accountability.
No, we do not.
Okay, so very quickly realizing this, and I tell you my background in psychology, doing in the University of Delaware, became very handy. So right away, I identified the room temperatures where I was. So my opening code was like this, straight up before I even opened my briefcase, right? So I was like this. He said, I want to start. He said, thank you very much for coming. The first things what I want to address, I want to start. He said, I'm here to give you the subjective opinion of the athlete you develop, by no means undermining your abilities of the technical and tactical coaching. My job is to give you the true value of the athletes who you coach and help you in the future to create the sessions what benefits that athletes and you in the longer term. Soon as I said that, suddenly things shifted. They're more open to what I want to say. So this is, as you can see, how data, some people love it and some people hate it. Depends what environment you are in, right? So I said to the coach, he said, okay, well, this is my findings. This is my issue. Well, you great in endurance. You're great on the movements. We're losing this power translated from lower body to the left staff, whatever. And I said to him, and this is a recommendation, what I think we should adapt to do. They didn't say anything like at all. And so just kind of, okay, thank you very much for coming, blah, blah, blah. We just having discussions. It was a little bit heating arguments here and there. And everybody understood. Everybody was very happy. We thanked each other. It was a great meeting. It was great for all parties involved. Every morning, coach started coaching the athletes at 5 a.m. And then they coach another group at 7. and he posts the videos on Instagram. I didn't have to ask him. I already know she changed some training sessions towards those reports because I can see it on the videos he records. And that's the validations you're looking for.
Yeah.
So then I stopped one morning and 2 weeks later in 5 o'clock in the morning in the gym. And I asked him of that. He said, hey, how is it going? He said, hey, coach. He said, man, I implemented some of the recommendations you give me. I can breathe better. I can move better. He said, I can already see the difference. And that's exactly what you're looking for. Now the coach has a bind. He trusts the data guys because we're not there to discredit anybody. We're here to help you to see who your athlete is and predict the models. Now, not that this is information based, not a judgment based. And I think nobody addressing this issue because you can see like an enemy because the truth is I said, hey, man, my athlete is the best. He played 90 minutes game. His beep test is like freaking barely 43%. How is that possible? Or his yo-yo test. It's like that's impossible to prove with data. So you know that's not true. So coming back to your story, how this is important to scouting. But so the issue what I have is two things. Number one is a concentrated data capture. That's mean if you have a combine, for example, that's a one-time event. That's a one-time testing. That's mean your sample size of the data is extremely small or not existent for that matter. Is a single point of data who you capture. So now you have to take that video to whatever sprints they did by not having the background story of the years of how he developed. So NFL, when they invite the players to the combine, they already have 3-4 years of the data from the universities. So the linguistic data capture counts. That's the reason why they get invited in the first place, right? So all those combines touring companies who comes in and, hey, we come once a year or twice a year, we have a combine a year, we're going to do your testing. So that's the one thing is a problem, just having the single capture of data. Number two, interpretation. Anybody can put two cones, have a stopwatch, sprint from point A to point B is a data capture. How accurate it is, it's not relevant. The problem is, okay, so you have that. Now what? What are you going to do with it? How are you going to apply to that athletes or to your team? That's all I need to know. Everything else is irrelevant. You tell me. So what is that 10-yard sprints, 20-year sprints means to you?
Exactly.
So that's my entire, when you're looking for the scouting, for example, you know this being in the United States. Think about 10 years ago. 10 years ago, we can send the clips with the best saves we ever done in a place. Coaches look at it and say, man, what a great player. I never showed them the rest of the garbage. We just show them. Now, you go to any NCAA coach. He wants 3 90-minute games. And one of those games has to be what you lost to the behavior of the losing game. So suddenly, he's not interested in highlights. The problem what I have with that, which coaching awards has a 240 minutes to watch every single athlete. And your business schedule coaching the teams. So you're going to be subjective. What this video is going to show you roughly, and you're going to make your decision. Now, if we have a video and we have a linguistic data base, I call it this, in my system called it player's passport. Over time, over years, each data point gives you specific aspect. So now, when you take a look at it and say you open his file, recruitment file, you have this is your highlights, and you look at it, you say, all right, wow, 86.2%. I like that. Let me take a look at these. Let me take a look at his graphs. Now you're making educating decision here. If I would have to wake up in the morning and look at the charts, I open my eyes, and he said, hey, today I'm going to be a millionaire. Yeah, good luck with that. You tell me how to work with it.
That's me every morning.
Yeah. So for me, it's important that, hey, how the market behaving this month, what happens in the stuff, what we're looking at a monthly candlesticks, right? The same with the athletes. We train 5 times a week, 6 times a week. Some clubs or university programs, NCAA preseason, train twice a day. What are the loads? What you require to do? Remember, when you recruit those athletes, some of them come from the high school or from the academy environments. They never subjected to those type of training before. So the first things in overloading is going to come what? You can lose 40% of your athletes to injuries, the groins, the ankles, the hamstrings, right? The first thing's going to
Soft
go.
tissue. Yeah.
That's what the first thing's going to go right away. So in the Real Academy of Alberta, the one things we implemented is this: we have to internally understand how we're developing those athletes. So if we send them to Mallorca, or we send them to Spain, or we send them to Las Vegas for the showcase trainings, those athletes who comes from here, they come not just with the technical, tactical, and psychological advantages, but they also come with the physical attributes who can be documented and tested for over time. This is how they arrive here. And this is a model. Did this going to work for every athlete? No, because every human is different. But
100%.
the models can be modified to your personality, your physical abilities and builds. You just have to modify your loads and prioritizations, how you do it. So in the end of the day, that's what subjective one-time testing for me personally, and I don't want to get myself in a hot water, but I really don't know what I would do with this because interpretation is almost not existing.
Yeah, I don't want to get myself into trouble either because from what I've observed, and I think folks know I'm not an expert in this space, but I have seen in other industries similar trends around bias towards subjectivity. And then you have this kind of almost pendulum effect of swinging to the other side where it's over collection of data without understanding of interpretation. Then it swings back and forth. And, the answer is usually somewhere in the middle. And again, that applies to not just sport, but in, excuse me, other spaces as well. So with that, before we go to the only named segment of behind the data, let's talk about the future of what the rest of 2026, we're here in mid-March 26, of what the rest of this year and beyond is going to look like. So what are some of your observations based on your pattern recognition of where the future of sports science is going?
Well, I had opportunity to watch some of the stuff what you posted from the Boston conference. And I logged in there as well and watched previous year episode and the classes. I think that if it comes to science and sports, we're getting so sophisticated right now, and the implementations of the AI have to be very careful how we over implement this to judge the human development and its progressions. So it's okay, I believe, to use the system for research, use the system for interpretation gathering is absolutely perfection. To use them from decision making, I would say no, because you still, as a human, you have to have a full context, like you said, to judgment decisions. We can't do it based on numbers alone, like computers. It's if that was that easy, you can model in a trading. You can model similar situations where the trades will be in automatically, and then you some of the market behaviors where they change. Those things will never work. So the same as in athletes. So then we need to futures right now, I think such a massive information availability, but at the same the dangers what comes with that is do we have also information overload without a context and interpretations what that actually means. So my final things were I was to say every coach who's gonna go rip the page out of the playbook and put the same, duplicate exactly the same the cones on a field, we're never going to have the same the outcome of the practice when a playbook was designed. Because if you don't know what each of those things mean and the interpretation for them and why they're there, because you're running the same pattern with not the same intent, the outcomes never will be the same.
Yeah, something you just said there. So you were, excuse me, you were referring to the MIT's Sloan Sports Analytics Conference, which I mean, it was fantastic in terms of the hearing from the different panelists and the speakers. So one thing that actually relates very precisely or specifically to this conversation and some of these themes of scouting is, and I don't want to misquote him, so I'll paraphrase, but I believe it was Nate Silver was speaking on a panel about just his thoughts on I believe the panel was how it, again, I don't remember exactly the name, but it was how it was like how everything has been like money, like the money ball of everything. Like from that book Moneyball, which maybe more people have seen the movie, but it's just like everything's having this analytics approach. And one of the questions was around something along the lines of like, why is it so difficult to predict if a quarterback drafted in the NFL draft will be the next Tom Brady? Because there's all this data, right, that exists. And then Nate spoke, again, my words, not his per se, the complexity of the sport of American football and how it's very dynamic and how strategies, even in game, can adjust. You can plan for one thing, but there's humans on the field, coaches can make adjustments and what have you. And he just said that, like, from his point of view, predicting who will be the next Tom Brady, even if they're drafted in the first top couple picks, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to do, and how some of these models just don't get it right. And to tie into what you mentioned about AI, no disrespect to anybody that spoke there in terms of commenting on this, and I'm not going to use the specific LM or large language model they referred to, though I was actually quite shocked at how, my words, naive some of the perspective is on using a particular LLM to just give you the answers. Whereas my take on all of this in terms of the AI using it to drive decisions is the small language models and these closed environments where you can have integrity in the accuracy of the data. You have the knowledge base, you have the right constraints, can help you derive outcomes that the human should still interpret and take decisions on, not just type something into LLM and get the answer, because of issues of hallucination, an n number of other potential issues. So I'm with you in general in terms of the future when it comes to sports science or data in sports and other industries. Is I believe too many people will be over dialed in on relying on these LLMs, whether they don't know or it's because everybody else is doing it, and those that have humans leading the interpretation of or guiding the AI in terms of, or the large language model in terms of interpreting and taking a decision are the ones that will win out. And it seems that most are going down this like, well, just type it in here and put it into this thing, it'll spit out the answer and voila, it's magic. And I don't think we should be so naive because anybody can do that. It'll be curious. It'll be curious to see, and I believe also I don't have the same opinion or point of view as others, which is okay too.
Well, I think it's extremely important. I have a opportunity to when I was doing my goalkeeping license pro in Carlson, yeah, one of our key speakers for the 2 weeks was Bruce Arena.
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah, so we had an opportunity to have him almost daily. And when he comes in and speak after supper, we were training and doing our courses for almost 12 hours a day. And then just shortly after, I also had an opportunity to see the Jose Mourinho. He was in Las Vegas conference and part of it. So the long story short is the question it became, he said the question was asked, he said, what advice you would give to the people so they can become like you? And that was a very wrong question to come into AI for you, for example. Depends how you phrase the questions, that the outcome is going to be different on the answers. We already know that anybody who uses an AI, you just twist it a little bit. The question outcomes are different, right? Jose Mourinho said very very important. He said you're never gonna be me because it's one of me. He said you can learn from me and adapt to your own personality. But I said if everybody wants to be me, who is gonna be themselves, right? And that's probably the best things you can do is you can duplicate those things. The human factor in sports always gonna be involved because humans are the one who play, not the robots. We can duplicate any surface distribution in the ball machines we want. And at the end of the day, we still have to take the calculation, the surface, the footwear, the athletes who's doing this, the wind, the sun, the rain, the snow. There's just so many objectivities, the way of the distribution. The fact is, superior technical athletes will find a way to control the balls in every environment what he has to his abilities. So let's take a Diego Maradona. He was virtual in the ball anywhere he wanted to. Then a Pele was completely different athletes. Then you have a Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi, Lewandowski, completely different athletes. They all are excellent and superior in their own world, but they're not the same, right? So, and they're all using analytics. They all probably use a lab testing. They all use all this stuff. Just this, we still don't produce the same human. We just help them to identify who they are. And I think that's what analytics should lead. Analytics is an informational tool, not a decision-making tool. And when people who don't understand this going to misinterpret this completely wrong. Our job as analytic coaches is to gather the information, interpret it properly, so giving the coaching staff to deeper understanding of the athlete's development who they coach in this moment. And based on everything what we have in interpretations, it allows the coach to predict the training sessions for the group of players and repeatable patterns, so he can better his team versus the tactical and technical needs. We're never gonna replace technique and tactics. But an aspect of it is, if you can run in a certain amount of time, you know why the 40 yards is important for NFL. That's the average of the run on the throw in NFL. There's a 40 yards before you get tackled. So that data existed. That's where they standardized. Everything has a definition and fact. Somebody wake up today said, wow, I wonder we should run 10 or 20. As you talk to anybody, you have a very, very serious guess on your stuff. No, none of the technical directors going to tell you, or development directors said, they just wake up and kind of draw the number on a napkin. So let's see if it's going to work today. Right. So analytics is a fraction of the model to help to create superior athlete in any sport. Tell you the truth, if you see those, I'm a football coach, but I have no problem working with hockey players. I have no problem working with the boxers and the World Club champions. I have no problem working with the volleyball coach, because in the end of the day, the first things and foremost, they're all athletes. And that's how it matters. The athletes in their own sport, as long as I understand the mechanics and the power of the artist staff, I can help them. Their coaching staff needs to worry about the technique and tactics. It's not my job.
Sure.
But I will help you with everything I got and the tools I have to give you the information how to guide these athletes, so you give them chance to be the superior. Without this, I always keep saying this, and I'm going to say this probably for the last time because it's getting tired. What every preseason starts from? Fitness testing. What is the fitness testing? Oh my God, it's generating the data. Ow. Must be shocking for some of the coaches. You do this for 100 years. The before, you didn't care. Later, you wrote in a napkin. After that, you figure out the notepad. Maybe there you get a spreadsheet. Oh, wow, we have computers. The capturing of data is different in interpretation. You've done this for 100 years. We're not inventing the wheel. We just invented how we're talking about it and how we generate it. Right? And a common sense needs to kind of prevail. And unfortunately, too much subjectivity of the coaches, of the leaders, who they're versing their opinions based on a gut feeling versus actually having the facts. And I'm going to rephrase this. If I'm going to wake up, oh, wow, I think the market's going to go up today, may as well just take a mortgage on another house because that damn house is gone. That's the bottom line.
I love it. Absolutely love it. I'll leave it with there's a lot there. A key advice is, and I love what you said about being one of one. It's like everyone's one of one. So don't try to be Jose Mourinho or someone else. Just be yourself. We'll leave it at that and go into the last segment with behind the data, the only named one. So we started with you in terms of your story. Like with other guests, we'll finish with you to get a sense of you, Tomasz or TJ, the person away from sports. So 4 rapid fire questions that we ask everyone. We'll start with this one. Is there a place that could be near, could be far, that's really special to you or close to your heart? And if you want to share why, then you can share why.
Tropea, Italy.
Okay. Have not heard of that place
So
yet. I'm going to check it out.
take a look at it. Tropea in Italy.
Okay, that's homework I think for everyone is check out Tropea.
Well, the Tropea in Italy, my wife's parents come from Calabria. Tropea in Italy is one of the most beautiful places, like in a paradise. Like I go there, I go in a boat and I literally feel like nothing in the world else matters.
Well, I just looked it up. Holy smokes. Okay, adding that to my list. Wow. Okay, that's amazing. Next one around food. Is there like a comfort food you have, or something that's just like a go to that you like or appreciate for whatever reason?
Because I'm married to Italian, so of course Italian food be automatically. But my favorite food, it comes from Poland, is actually the tripe soup flaczki. Is my favorite
I
food
guess
by far.
flashki.
Yeah, by far, by far.
That was my so I'm laughing because in prior episodes I had in my mind if someone was Eastern European, I would guess they're gonna say pirog, and I was like, I'm gonna stop guessing, so I didn't even try. Did not think you were gonna say flachki. That was actually my brother's favorite growing up.
My mother was 53 years professional chef. She was running the master restaurant, so I was very spoiled to grow up in a extremely gourmet food. But grandma's flaczki, nothing
Yeah,
beats more than that. As you can, there's no contest here.
I'm I'm with you. People have to. We won't explain necessarily what it is. People have to
No,
Google it. Don't or just don't Google it. Just try it. It is very good. Very, I believe, also nutritious and good for you. So two more. Is there a song or what's a song that just puts you in a good mood or gets you focused or gets you pumped up? Do you have one?
Sherry Sherry Lady by Modern Talking.
And last but not least, is there a book that you've read lately, like the last year or two, that's had an impact on you or taught you a lesson that you want others to check out?
Trading in a Zone by Margaret Douglas.
Training in the zone. Okay, cool. We'll add all those to the list and the write up.
The lessons would you learn? And it's very simple. He said the one single trade is a lock. The sample of the 20 trades is a story.
I'm gonna have to think about that for a minute, but we will not leave folks.
Or what he says, you can predict the outcome based on one, but you have a collective data of 20 stories, and then you can actually predict the outcomes you have. So what he says, we have no bearing on a one single outcome, but we execute the patterns for the 20 times. We will discover is a patterns in that sample size.
Which is very much to the theme of what we discussed today.
Margaret Douglas was
Yeah.
very important aspect. Is it two things what is important to me to build my system if I can finish? Margaret
Yep.
Douglas called it was it was a trading in a zone, the sample of 20 versus one sample. That book is from like 1970s, but it was just rewrote right now on aspect of it. The another one, the movie Hidden Figures. If you're looking with a Kevin Costner, and the Hidden
Okay.
Figures was a woman working as a computers in NASA. They were trying to figure out how to put Glenn Anderson on the moon on a rocket. Is a one scene, particular scene, where the actress is looking in a big white board, big boards, and they're writing the equations. And she came to conclusion and said, maybe we're looking on this wrong. Maybe this is no new math. It's a math who already exists. And that was Oracle methods. So that's what a story to do was sometimes we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just need to apply properly to the situations where we are.
Really, really good advice to end the episode. So TJ, thank you so much for taking the time.
It's my
This has been
pleasure.
great. Hopefully, we can do it again sometime soon.
Oh, of course, absolutely. Anything. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.